Utah. Late November 2009, the night before Thanksgiving. A 26-year-old medical student named John Edward Jones, deep inside Nutty Putty Cave, group of family and friends, his brother Josh among them, doing something that, by this point, thousands of people before him had done without incident. The cave had been open to the public in some form for decades, gated and managed, with a known route through it called the Birth Canal that generations of Utah cavers treated almost like a rite of passage. John wasn't reckless. He was a student, a husband, a father to one little girl with a second child on the way, out for a holiday weekend adventure with people he loved. Around 9 that night, looking for what he believed was the way into that familiar passage, he took a turn into a narrow crevice called Bob's Push. He went in head first. He was wrong about where it led. The fissure narrowed as he went, shaped like an L, barely 18 inches by 10 in places, and somewhere a few hundred feet in, upside down, in complete darkness, John Jones stopped being able to move forward or back. When the first trained rescuer, a caver named Susie Motola, finally crawled roughly 135 feet through that tunnel to reach him a crawl that took her about 30 minutes on its own. His first words to her weren't panic. They were almost polite.
"Hi, Susie. Thanks for coming, but I really want to get out."
He'd already been trapped for 3.5 hours at that point. I want to sit with that for a second, because it tells you something about who he was, even upside down in the dark, in a space that size. His instinct was to introduce himself properly before asking for help. His brother Josh had been the first to try. Around 9:30, half an hour after John went in, Josh worked his way toward him and tried pulling him out by the ankles. It didn't work, and it was in that moment, not from anything John said, but from what Josh could physically see, that the situation stopped looking like a stuck hiker and started looking like something else. Josh later told the Salt Lake Tribune,
"Seeing his feet and seeing how swallowed he was by the rock, that's when I knew it was serious. It was really serious."
He went for help. By 10 o'clock, the family had called it in, and Utah County Search and Rescue was mobilizing a response that would eventually take over 100 people. For those first few hours, nobody outside that cave could do anything but wait. And wait is exactly what they did. Susie Motola didn't reach him until around 12:30 in the morning, 3.5 hours after he first got stuck, and even then, reaching him was only step one. The space around him was too tight for most rescuers to work in directly. Getting him out was going to take hours more, and it was going to take almost the entire day of Thanksgiving to do it. Here's where the story pivots, and it's worth marking that turn clearly, because everything before this point is a rescue in progress, and everything after it is a rescue that briefly succeeded. By Wednesday afternoon and into the evening, rescuers using a rope and pulley system managed to do what had seemed impossible for most of the day. They got him out of the immediate crevice. He was freed. He was even able to speak briefly with his wife, Emily, over a police radio. For a window of time, however short, the family on the surface believed this was close to over. Everything before this is relief. Everything after is the second. It wasn't. Shortly after that partial extraction, the rigging system failed under the strain. What's confirmed is that the rope and pulley setup gave way, and John dropped back into the hole, deeper than he'd been before. The exact mechanical cause of that failure isn't something I can state with full confidence, so I won't pretend otherwise. What's certain is the outcome. He went from being nearly free to being trapped again, further down, and this time there would be no second extraction. John Edward Jones was pronounced dead late that night at 11:56 p.m. on November 25th, roughly 28 hours after he'd first gotten stuck. The cause was cardiac arrest, attributed to the prolonged strain of being trapped upside down, what's known as positional asphyxia. The following day, Thanksgiving Day, Utah County officials, the landowner, and the Jones family made a joint decision that recovering his body would put rescuers at unacceptable risk. Over the following 2 days, explosives were used to collapse the ceiling near the passage, and the cave's entrances were filled with concrete. Nutty Putty Cave was permanently sealed, with John still inside it. I'll say plainly that not everyone in the caving community agreed with that decision. There were cavers who felt differently about permanent closure, and it remains a point of quiet disagreement in that world. But it was the family's decision too, made together with the people who'd spent a full day trying to bring him home another way. Something else worth knowing, because it complicates any idea that this spot came out of nowhere. John wasn't the first person to get stuck in that exact crevice. 2 other cavers had been trapped there and successfully rescued during the same week back in 2004. He was the 3rd person that specific spot had caught. He was the only one it didn't let go of. So who was he, beyond that night? John was a University of Virginia medical student, a husband, and a father. Emily was pregnant with their 2nd child when he died, with their daughter Lizzie already at home. At his memorial service on November 28th, by most accounts, the family spent much of it not receiving comfort but giving it thanking and comforting the rescuers who had spent Thanksgiving trying to save him. That detail says something about the kind of family this was before any of this happened, and the kind it remained after. Emily has spoken publicly and extensively about the years since, including cooperating with a 2016 dramatized film, The Last Descent, made with her and the Jones family's blessing. She's since remarried to Donovan Sanchez, and now lives in Peoria, Illinois, raising 3 children: Lizzie, a son named John, and a younger child, Emerson. She said it's never been hard to talk about John, and that her husband has supported keeping his memory present for the kids. I want to be clear about something here, because it matters. More than a decade later, Emily and her children have said they still deal with online harassment tied to this story. That's not a footnote. It's part of why the way this story gets told matters. On the 1st anniversary, she described just how unfinished that grief still was.
It was such a devastating Thanksgiving, because everyone told me, you don't have to figure everything out. Give yourself a year, and it was the next year and I had nothing figured out.
That's not a tidy quote. It's an honest one. Years later, talking about what she'd come to believe since that night, Emily Jones-Sanchez said this:
I can say that I know for sure, without a doubt. I know there is life after death. I know John is still alive.
And in another conversation about that same period,
I knew death wasn't the end. I knew John was still out there. I thought, okay, he has work to do and I need to figure out what I'm going to do.
If you want more of these, subscribe, there's a lot more like it coming. Here's the part that still bugs me. 2 people got stuck in that exact same crevice 5 years before John did. Both walked out. The cave stayed open anyway. Would you have kept it open too, or sealed it the second someone got trapped the first time? Let me know in the comments.